Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here with you today. Maybe two things before I start. It's been a long time since I didn't have a speech in English, so please forgive my accent, forgive all my mistakes in English. And the second one is that as English is not my mother tongue, and in French I just have notes and I don't read. This time I will read something because it's more effective for me to speak about the subject. In 2018, I, along with a number of members of parliament accurate to those subjects, wanted to draft a digital charter with the ambition of seeing it incorporated in the French constitutional bloc, the constitution law in France, according to the old good principle that no man is a prophet in his own country. I have to admit that this project unfortunately fell through. 5 years on, I'm more convinced than ever that it's high time to get back to the drawing board, that time at the European level. Within this text, free software obviously occupied an essential place. That's why, in my opinion. First of all, free software conveys a number of values that I believe to be essential. Values that take us back to the old, too often forgotten values promoted by the internet in its early days, when Britain's Tim Berners-Lee imagined the World Wide Web. Open source software encourages cooperation, collaboration, and mutual support, which in turn encourages continuous improvement through sharing and working together. The work is public and can be audited, satisfying the need for transparency in algorithms and public decision-making. Free softwares are also a vector of sovereignty and freedom, because it is accessible to all, and it reduces dependence and subjection to GAFAM's proprietary solutions, and the multitude of patents they generate, which make users captive, according to the good old principle that divorce is more expensive than marriage. Because it provides a better knowledge of architecture and entities information system, open source software allows greater knowledge of flows and failures, and also of data flows, and therefore a more relevant application of the GDPR. It therefore seems to me urgent and essential to protect the virtuous tool that is free software, in the face of the tentacular hydra formed by the proliferation of American software patents. At that time, when this battle must be fought at European level, I find it all the more regrettable that the Cyber Resilience Act, if applied in its current form, would have a complementary detrimental effect on the development and use of open source software on our continent. Not only the open source community has not been consulted, despite the fact that open source software accounts for over 70% of the software integrated into digital products in Europe. But the IRC takes no account of the unique needs and prospects of open source softwares, particularly as a modern methodology for creating software. By ignoring the open source software, the current text contradicts Europe's stated objectives in terms of innovation and digital sovereignty. I therefore endorse the 4 demands made by the open source organizations in an open letter. First, recognize the unique characteristics of open source software and ensure that the Cyber Resilience Act does not unintentionally harm the open source ecosystem. Second, consult with the open source community during the co-legislative process. Third, ensure that any development under the CRA takes into account the diversity of open and transparent open source software's development practices. Fourth, establish a mechanism for ongoing dialogue and collaboration between the European institutions and the open source community to ensure that the future legislation and policy decisions are relevant. Fortunately, the European regulation in the pipe are not also worrying. In the regulation on AI, members of European Parliament recognize the importance of development of open source software in this sector and want to preserve it. The principle of transferring responsibility to those who profit from the market, rather than focusing on developers, should protect open source software and its contributors. As a legislator, I will in any case be vigilant about the transposition of the AI that will be made in France, in a constant concern to seek digital sovereignty and protect the ecosystem. The national sovereignty is an essential issue for any politician who is concerned about the public good, that often forgotten notion of the general interest. Digital technology and its ecosystem are playing an essential and growing part of this requirement because of the transversal role they play in our society in general and our economy in particular. We must avoid rhetoric and unfilled promises or risk being accused, at the best of incompetence, at worst of complicity with the foreign giants in the sector. We need to be pragmatic and take advantage of our apparent weakness. In particular, I'm in favor of directing public orders towards small and medium-sized European players and of forming consortia around projects. We should prefer handmade to off-the-shelf. The Americans, anxious to protect their economy and great believers in do as I say and not as I do, have drawn out the Small Business Act and the Buy American Act to protect their economy. What are we waiting for to introduce equivalent European legislation? When we will see an European Small Business Act and a Buy European Act? We could also consider using free software as much as possible in the public procurement, which would have a positive influence on the digital behavior of our fellow citizens. These are just some of the possibilities that could be explored in a transparent European digital charter drawn by European and national parliamentarians. Thank you.